Welcome back, everybody. We are continuing our conversation with Sid Mishra, SVP and Global Head of Salesforce Delivery for Persistent Systems. And Sid, what we're going to get into now is talking about something you and I have talked about in the past, is our future leaders, right? This Gen Z population and what they're going to mean for the workforce and what you need to do as an organization to prepare for them. So let's just really quick kind of frame the picture here. This isn't necessarily new news to anybody. You can all find it. But Gen Z is going to account for 27% of the global workforce by 2025. If you're good at math, that's 1 year from now. 6 months, depending on what calendar you're following. And it's estimated that 20% of the US population is Gen Z. So whatever your perceptions are on the generation, their habits, whatever it's going to be, doesn't really matter because they're here and they're entering the workforce today. And some of folks can look at this as what am I going to do? I don't know what TikTok is. I don't know what, or you can look at it as an opportunity, right? To create a workforce, to create a workplace that excites this generation. And this is something that you're passionate about, something you actively work on. So I'd love to talk to you about what does it mean to bring this generation into the fold at somewhere like Persistent Systems?
Great question, Chris. And obviously, being in the IT industry for many years and trying to make sure that we deliver the best outcome from our consultants. And again, I think Mahesh had mentioned in the last podcast about, outcomes. And I always tell the team that, please be outcome focused. Even a developer who's developing should look at the business outcome he or she is delivering, and that will make sure that the focus is, bent on the right part. On the Gen Z aspect, it's a good learning. Frankly, as I believe in the approach of being a servant leader, I frankly like to learn a lot from them. See, because at the end of it, companies like Provus, Persistent, Salesforce, and all of us exist because we are changing the world so that these customers of ours can ultimately deliver to this Gen Z itself. We are building those cool apps on mobile and the entire consumerization of application because the consumers of tomorrow, which is Gen Zs, are actually expecting the same Amazon-like experience on the enterprise apps as well. If we don't do it, it's going to be disservice. And to do that, honestly speaking, it's the flip side. I need to learn from them. When they join my workforce, I need to understand from them, what do you want, guys? Because for you, all these companies, which are my customers, are changing their apps. And that's the way you should. So when they come in, my worry, if I may call, is that, my existing managers should not change them. I don't want them to become another brick in the wall. I think they should try to learn from them and try to, while educating them the best of the breed that we know, also adapt from them, right? Because I'll tell you, I'm hoping I'm not making the answer very long, but see, I'll give you a few scenarios. I think at Persistent, one thing that I really like is the hackathons that we do. And our founder, Anand Deshpande, has been a technologist himself. And even now he's our founder member and the chairman. The hackathon we do over the weekend, it happens for almost 48 hours ongoing. He comes 12 a.m. midnight and he's sitting with all the fresh young kids that we have hired, and they are building those cool tools, right? And they don't care whether it's this tool, that tool, what technology, right? Within 12 hours to 14 hours to 18 hours, the kind of tools that they build, the kind of business problems that they solve, and they think of those business problems. And those are very, very insightful for me. Frankly, there have been customer visits that have happened. And I've taken these young kids to my prospects and said that, see, this is the kind of work we are able to provide a platform to them, and they are able to create. So for that, I need to create that culture. I need to create a culture which is very, very adaptable to get the best out of these talent while I understand them, right? I'll tell you, it's not very easy. The Gen Zs, they prefer flexibility, right? The work-life balance question that they expect is very, very different. They also prefer collaboration, and collaboration collaboration means the workplace should be vibrant enough so that they are able to sit in a cafe and try to work if they want, or if they want to work in some other place, they should be able to. We should provide the digital tools to collaborate like the way we are doing it, right? So things are changing and we need to adapt. Reason why, frankly, at Persistent, being a little more nimble organization, the way we call ourselves is small enough to care, large enough to deliver. We are at the right cusp where we are able to adapt and understand and create these environment for our Gen Z so that we can expect the best out of them, right? So I think it's a good learning for me. I always look forward to, frankly, a couple of days back, I was addressing the college grads, and I was very surprised. 3,000 college grads who are right now in their final year of engineering came on the call, and I gave them a bit of a view about what is Salesforce, what is software as a service, what is CRM, what is CPQ, and all those areas. And they are all, I'm sure, starry-eyed, looking at what's this world that's going to hit us. While I was telling them, I told them the same thing, guys. While you learn from us, please teach us as well, because you are the guys for which we are in a way creating all these cool apps. So again, I hope I answered your question in the way we have a philosophy and the culture that we create to make sure that we get the best out of the Gen Zs that we hire.
Yeah, and I think there's an outcome there as well that we're all going for, right? If you're a customer-centric organization, and specifically in services, the people that you have serve your customers and they deliver to your customers. So that in its own way, Mahesh, I mean, can you speak to kind of the competitive advantage that you get in a services organization if you're exciting your people?
Yeah. I think it's a bang on. I think you're running a large organization, and especially Chris talked about the US population, and 27% Gen Zers here entering the workforce or already being in the workforce. I'm sure that number is much higher in India, probably, right, where a large part of your organization is. And I was managing director for a company called ThoughtWorks. This was probably before the Gen Zers. It was what was it, millennials. So I had a problem of millennials, right? So, and dealing with millennials in a culture where it's collaborative culture, it's not hierarchy driven, it's collective decision making, right? All of that kind of stuff that actually led to me changing the style of leadership, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot rides on the leadership and the style and what they learn. And you, like you said, you have to learn from them in terms of how do they accept things, how do they learn things, right? And so one of the things I had to do out of many is really in a collective decision making collaborative culture, you just have to spend a lot of time with this millennials during my time back then to just explain them and make them aware of the context, right? And then let them make the decisions. Well, because once they make the decisions, then you don't have to micromanage. You don't have to really worry about execution, because it's their decision and they're going to do it. As opposed to you standing up and saying that, okay, here is what we are going to do. And they're like, well, I don't know why we are going to do this, right? And then the execution is kind of very patchy and all that kind of stuff, right? So so you are absolutely right. I think, and arguably every next generation is smarter than the previous generation, right? And so again, as a leader, you can't sit there and say, I'm going to be the smartest person. No, I think your smartness is how do you collectively get all of that smartness in the room to everyone's benefit, all stakeholders, not just customers, but for their own benefits, investors' benefits, customers' benefits, all of that kind of stuff. So it's an amazing problem. I think the question back to you is, you obviously as the leader of the organization, and then you have many leaders who underneath you who are working with the workforce. Any insights into how you and your organization had to change or adapt to from a leadership style perspective that works with the Gen Zers?
Interesting one. So I think one thing that when you spoke about the outcome and the what should excite them, right? It's not an instruction you give and you expect that you follow it to the T. The meaningful purpose is very important, right? I think trying to make sure that they understand the meaning of it, and that's why the business outcome at times, telling a techie that this is what you're doing, it's so important because you are impacting a global pharma company and the way they deal with their patients, and that is what makes them even more motivated and passionate to do it, right? Because you can't just push them saying that you have to come at 9 a.m., you have to leave at 6 a.m. This is what. So the approach has to be very, very different. So that is one part I'd say, Mahesh, that we have to. Second, what we did is, again, learning is there in Persistent, in the genes of Persistent, right? I have seen here, I think we literally celebrate learning. And we have now a dedicated 4-storied building. We call it Persistent University. And frankly, we also get our customers to come, and that's where the hackathon happens, right? It's a and the facility is, the environment is where people come in. It's a new setup where it offers a lot of collaborative spaces, and so that's one part where we know that learning is where, instead of trying to put a stick on somebody's head and saying that you have to come 5 days in office, try to make sure this is what is your meaningful purpose, because you'll get to learn something. This is something that should excite you. This is what will make you passionate. You'll have hackathons and others. So we are trying to build those fundamental things which can, in a way, give us the outcome that obviously as an IT services company, we need people to come and work for 8 hours a day or more.
Yeah.
But so trying to, in a way, try to define those key strict metrics, I think trying to give an environment where it becomes part of your culture and you are excited and happy. I think those are the few things I can think, Mahesh, we try to evolve and try to just learn.
Yeah, no, this is great. And back in the day, one of the things, like you said is they are kind of shielded or they are behind the scene from all the customer action. The people who are customer facing or on site and all that, I think they see all of these interactions and customer action, but people who are working behind the scene, they are not seeing the customer action. And so one of the things I remember I had done was to set up on a monthly or some frequency basis where customer can actually address and talk to the entire team and talk about every line of code that you are writing, how it's actually impacting the users and customer's customer, right? And how it's making the life better and all that. And that was really an eye-opening sessions, because otherwise it's easy for you to sit behind a desk and do your coding, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Why should I be motivated to do this? I will just do it because it's a job, not because a passion and the business problem you're solving. So I think that, and I think with that generation, when you give that kind of insight, I think it really opens up a lot of possibilities and a lot of opportunities.
No, you're right. Frankly, we've done that as well. I think whenever customer, I would actually promote the customer to talk more with the manager sitting in the back and letting them know what great stuff they've done, or maybe even bad stuff they've done and how they can improve. Second, also, I think whenever I come after a customer visit to US or anywhere, I love talking to them on a periodic basis and letting them know that this is what is happening, right? Guys, what you did has had this kind of impact, right? And again, our CEO Sandeep is also very, very passionate about, talking to all the, even Gen Zs and other developers and techies so that they understand what is happening, right, in the market. And that's why they are all outcome focused. I think those all things definitely help a lot.
Yeah,
that's
great.
That's really, I think that's a great first takeaway, right? It's like creating this culture and putting the ultimate purpose in front of your workforce. And part of the podcast, what we're trying to explain to the audience, I want to pull back to something you said in your first little bit just now, Sid, where you're saying these experiences that this generation is expecting is similar to their consumer-based experiences internally, right? Even with enterprise applications, whatever it's going to be. And I think as a services organization, your competitive advantage or disadvantage is the talent of your workforce and in the retention of your workforce, right? The longer people stay, the more efficient they are, the more knowledgeable they are, and the better you can serve your customers. And so think about those areas where you can make the experience a little bit better. And so I want to talk a little bit about that digital experience, that internal digital experience, right? We have people, process, and technology that we'd like to talk about. Let's talk about, what do you do to deliver an internal experience, whether it be with internal tooling, process, whatever it's going to be, that's not going to, we'll say, turn off this next generation of leaders. So they're like, they don't have it together. I'm going to go somewhere else where it is more exciting.
Yeah. And you know what, Chris, good point. See, this also tells me how challenging it is for my customers to please this end customer of theirs, right? Which is Gen Z, right? Because when we try to build our own IT tools, and it becomes legacy very soon, because the expectation is very, very. So, for example, we use Salesforce internally as well. So that's one tool which is. It's almost like eating your own dog food or sipping your own champagne, whatever you call it. But that's again something we do, right? Because if we don't do it internally, I think it's a disservice. If we use some crappy thing internally and we try to sell that, this, so that's something we do. Again, engineering being in our genes, there are many tools which are developed by our own, in-house CIO organization as well, which are there. And I'm sure it's challenging for them because I'm the internal customers, and I'm all these Gen Zs. If I let them go berserk, they'll be behind them, giving them requirements that this is all you should define. So it's very interesting thing. We are constantly evolving, and also having them participate in these hackathons and events where they can come in and try to say, you give your suggestion. How do you think the app should be? And you know what? I'll give you a very cool example where 5 young kids who had joined our organization, over 24 hours, they built a tool where during an interview, if you are interviewing an expert, how you are able to understand the language, the tone, everything, and then try to, automatically come out with a rating that this candidate was nervous, was expert in this area, was not. So very, very cool tool that they're able to develop, right? And it's just a plugin on Microsoft Teams. So I think that's the kind of thing that they're able to build using what cool technologies that they knew much better than I did. But so those are experiences and this tells my IT team that that's the experience they want. When they will interview somebody else that they're hiring in our organization, possibly they need such kind of tools which can help them do it much better, faster than writing on a pen and paper. So those are things that gives the user requirements to my CIO, who are obviously on their tools to make sure that things become better.
I really like that example. I like that example because if you think about our audience of folks, they're in charge of delivery, or they're in charge of apps, or they're in charge of something. Don't close your mind to what to improve within your organization.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an example of, we want to have better interviews, less paper, faster follow-up, whatever it's going to be. It's something that if you've been in a workforce for a long time, maybe you don't even think about it anymore. Right. You're just like, oh, I know, I just fill out my 2 sentences about this person and ship it off to the next person in the cycle. Like, done. So there's nothing off limits for this generation coming in. So whether don't think that your 10-year-old or 3-year-old process within Salesforce your workflow is optimized the way it needs to be. Right? Don't think that the way you collaborate on a new customer project or scoping a new customer project is where it needs to be for this generation coming to remain excited. And if we're gonna do the algebra here, like, excited generation, workforce of tomorrow, workforce retention, customer outcome, right? So it's all there, right? It's all there, and that's what's something I really appreciate about you, Sid, is your emphasis on your people. First thing I asked you, I'm like, what's on top of your mind right now? It wasn't about macroeconomics or anything like that. It was about my people. I got to have this organization ready for my people. And I think that really, really matters in services organizations. So if you're a services operator, somebody making operational decisions, think about your people and how that serves your customers.
That's true, right, Chris? See, it's ultimately a virtuous cycle. If they're happy employees, they'll make the customers happy, right? It's a virtuous cycle. If and again, I think goes back to what we consume is what we'll be able to. If you're living in 2 different worlds, the fake solutions you provide, or you're trying to make up something, will be revealed. If you have something in your genes, then that will be visible to the customer. I think that's what we'll try to. I know there's always gaps and areas of improvement, but that's something ultimately we all look for achieving.
That's really great. Okay, so we have about time for one more sort of wrap-up takeaways. Sid, we like to leave our audience with 1 or 2 takeaways to really galvanize them, to get them excited and actually go implement in their organizations at the end of every episode. So Sid and Mahesh, what's one thing from this topic that you say, you know what, if you learn anything from this last 15 minutes or so, remember this, go do this?
So I should.
Okay. So I think, I don't know what I'm still looking for, learning from what I can learn, frankly, more, right? I think what I've got is something that I shared. It's also what I think the talent of the future and the needs of the future are going to be very, very different. We can't again sit on our laurels of what we've done in the past and, try to again see that that's what is going to work. No, it's not. We are used to hiring engineers, right? The talent of tomorrow, will that be all engineering talent, or it will need a lot more creativity? I don't know. I think we've experimented in the past, where we've got, whether it's arts or other students who might be able to be better prompt writers, somebody who knows better English might be a good prompt writer than somebody who knows deep computer sciences technologies. So things are going to evolve, and we need to keep our minds open to look at what strength somebody has, and try to mix and match, and try to make sure that we provide a platform, learn from these young guys who are, guys and girls who are able to change it. So that's one part. But again, one thing that remains constant is the virtuous cycle I mentioned, right? Trying to make sure a platform where our employees are engaged, They have a meaningful purpose to come and deliver something. They are passionate about what's the business outcome they are delivering in the real world. And that is what will drive them, because otherwise, usual metrics will not. So trying to create that environment, trying to also have a bit of a servant leadership kind of approach where you're looking at learning constantly while not being a manager sitting on their head saying that, it's a 12 hours you need to work. I think that is the culture and approach will help us drive. But then the talent of tomorrow and the needs of tomorrow is going to be very, very different. So we need to be continuously learning and trying to make sure we create a culture which is again promoting continuous learning. I think that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, right, Sid? Absolutely. For the longest time, the corporate culture was that, hey, there's a company, they have customers, and there's a way of working, and you join that corporate culture and you adjust yourself. That was the phenomenon for the longest time. You and I are part of that generation, right? We were not asked like, hey, what do you expect or how do you work, and none of that stuff. We just say, okay, what's the work, and we would just get it done. We would not question work-life balance. We would not question, if we are working on Saturdays and Sundays, we would just do it. And now I think it's shifting, right? The corporate culture is defined by the employees. How productive can you make them? You cannot go and sell something that your workforce cannot deliver. That disconnect you no longer can afford, because the newer generation is not going to come in and say, okay, I'm going to mold myself into whatever this organization is. I mean, to an extent they will, but not change completely, right? And so I think the takeaway really for the growing organization from my perspective is really understand the culture, understand the newer talent that you are bringing in, and see how you can actually take that and sell to the customers, as opposed to bring whatever customer is giving to you and try to do it. Otherwise, you're going to fail miserably, because customers will trust you to do something. You don't have a talent or the motivation from people to do it, and you're just going to fall flat, right? So it's better that you create the culture or understand the culture. What is it that your talent pool can deliver, and take it to the market in a meaningful way. I think that's the shift that's going to happen with Gen Zers. And I don't know what comes after Gen Z, but whatever that is, I think that's definitely going to be there.
Yeah, no, very well said, Mahesh.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this episode. Really insightful. A little bit of a different angle than what we've talked about in the past, but it's all so important to services operations. And so that's it. That's it for this episode of Services Ops Podcast. Sid, thank you so much for being here. If you're interested or want to learn more about persistent systems, persistent.com is the place to go. You can also find Sid on LinkedIn. Thank you all for listening, subscribing, and following. Go out, be bold, drive change, and take care of your people, because they're going to take care of your customers.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks, Mahesh. Great talking to you.
That's it.